All right, we're recording. Hi, everybody. I'm Christopher from the Midwest Workshop and Garden. This is my friend Jason. Jason, say hi.
Hi, I'm Jason Cyberlick. I refer to my YouTube channel as Our Lawn. Do a lot of just lawn care and general outdoor maintenance here around the house that we bought. So, yeah.
And guess what, guys? We're doing a YouTube podcast thing for a little while, at least for the springtime, and we're bringing you along. So, welcome to episode number one. It is wholeheartedly unscripted, and it will be a wide catch-all today. And this was Jason's idea, so credit where credit is due. He's on my left. He's right here, and he said, "Hey, I've got this gardening that I want to do, and I should ask Chris some questions." We go back to high school. And so we decided to record it. What did I miss, Jason?
No, I think that was it. We have the house that we bought had a garden in it, and we've dabbled over the last couple years, had some success with getting some cucumbers and strawberries and tomatoes and peppers. I think we've done okay with. And yeah, kind of wanted to start to take it a little bit more seriously. Like Chris mentioned, we were friends, knew each other through high school, and knew that he was big into this, fairly knowledgeable, and wanted to pick his brain, and figured if I have questions getting into gardening, a bunch of either Chris or Mai or anybody that comes along this video would have some of the same questions. So figured it'd be useful for everyone.
Beautiful. Even though thank you, our backgrounds are like workshops and dark basements. We're all about green things and gardening. I brought some seeds that I'm starting on Monday that we can talk about. So
Oh, nice.
links to everybody's channels are down in the description below. If you're tuning in, you should definitely check out all of Jason's stuff. And so I'm going to say, since this was your idea today, why don't you take it away? You start with questions, and we'll see where this goes. So all you.
All right. Yeah, I kind of tried to think of, okay, what is if you are somebody that just bought a house or has had a house and is, stuck at home all the time now and you're looking for a hobby, gardening makes a lot of sense. And so trying to think to start from the beginning, is there a place in the lot that you have, shade conditions, sun, location, anything like that, that would be more beneficial, that if you have an option to put it anywhere, where would you put, where would the ideal place be?
Sure. Let's just say all of your conditions are ideal, and you've got the right amount of time that you can contribute to this and everything else, and you've got a good amount of land that you can utilize. If you have a choice, get something that's southern exposure. Because especially if you're where most of our viewers are in the northern hemisphere, you've got that sun that'll track, and you'll get morning, midday, and afternoon sun. In general, I think the most optimal plot, unless you're growing one crop out in the field, is to have a nice mix of sun and shade, mostly sun. In my garden, I grow such a variety of things that some of them like more shade, some of them like more sun. And if you have the option, when you watch the shadows from your trees or your house or whatever track throughout the day, you'll be able to plant things in the appropriate spot, and you can have the best of both worlds for all of the plants. So
Okay.
the short answer is southern exposure.
Okay. Is So that you kind of touched on a little bit my next question, which was going to be, how do you then, you've picked the place that you want to do it. How do you design, where am I going to put something? Because I think I've even, in a couple of your videos, you've even talked about like you will plant things because they'll be in the shade of something else. So I guess how do you, like when you look up a seed and you find if it likes shade or it likes sun, or kind of what's your process for figuring out this is going to go there?
Oh, that is the garden design is a huge question. My garden has grown. I've got this video where I talk about like a 6 year evolution of it from when it went from junk pile to what it was a couple of years ago, this beautiful oasis. That's a winner to check out. I talk about it a little bit more at length. Um, First off, know what you want to eat. That's always good. Grow what you like is a big recommendation. But there's a lot of good recommendations when you're looking up seeds. Like, say you wanted to grow um, cucumbers, and you've never grown anything before, and you start looking up how to grow cucumbers. You'll find things about trellises, and if you're looking on Pinterest, you'll find some really cool different designs, and you'll probably come across some of them on an angled trellis, for example, like this. And it'll start talking about co-planting, that if you plant them on an angle with the sun over here for the cucumbers, they get more solar radiation, and then you can grow things that like more shade down below. Like you can plant some lettuce down below that likes that more cool thing, that cool temperature and more shade. That was how I first started to learn about co-planting as far as those methods. And then that transitioned into understanding things like that you get exposed to the Three Sisters gardening method, which is many Native American cultures would plant corn, and then with their corn, after a little while, you plant some beans that would climb up in there, and then eventually you plant some squash around the bottom, and that would help, kill out weeds and mitigate the bugs a little bit. So those are good things to plant together. Um, but you just a little bit, it's a little bit trial and error, definitely, and just see what works. I can give you more examples from my garden.
Yeah.
But I
Because
think
I mean, you have
great.
that like trellis thing that you've built in the entry. I mean, realistically, the garden you have is beautiful. I enjoy what kind of watching what you have and what you've done. But yeah, I mean, if
Come
you
up
want
to
to go over maybe
Oshkosh,
some of the
walk through.
other, sorry, what was that?
Come up to Oshkosh, walk through anytime. Bring the kids.
Ah, that's a good point. We're up there actually a fair amount because my parents still live there. So whenever we visit, I will keep that in mind.
Good.
But yeah, if you maybe want to talk about a couple of the other like combinations you've put together and found that work.
Yeah, well, think about long term too when you're talking about designing a garden. If you're planting any perennials, which is a different topic, we're mostly talking about annuals so far.
Yep.
Remember that perennials will grow. So, when I think of my garden, the left half is effectively all perennial, big berry bushes and some trees and things like that. Um, I have a bed that's co-planted asparagus and strawberries. That was a good co-planting thing. Some method behind that madness. The strawberries will spread out, so they do a great job of just covering my bed, which helps prevent some weeds and things. I do very little weeding in my garden. And then the asparagus grows up, and after you're done harvesting the asparagus in the early part of the spring, you let those shoots grow into fronds that kind of look like this big, fluffy bush. And that's great because that obscures the view of the birds, so they don't get to see those red berries that are coming later in the season. So the foliage will protect the berries from predation in that aspect. But they're also great to plant together because they draw nutrients from different levels of the soil. So my bed is about, well, go down as far as you want because I don't have a barrier on the bottom of it. But
Yep.
the strawberries are pulling from 6 inches down, and the asparagus crowns are pulling from 12 inches and below. So they're not competing with each other either.
Okay.
So you've got different times, different soil levels, and they're helping each other from predation at different times. It's really a great situation.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not, admittedly, I'm not eating a lot of the stuff that's coming out of our garden. That's probably somewhat shameful to admit. I've been a picky eater from my only child origins, and I still carry that with me to some degree. But I know my wife loves asparagus, and we already have the strawberry bed, so
Oh,
that's a good one to kind of keep in mind. I think actually that was our strawberries kind of, I think, outcompeted each other towards the end of this last year. So I finally like got smart enough to thin them out a little bit.
that's
So
what you got to do. You got to thin them. Those plants will last about 2 to 3 years, depending on your variety. So the mothers you eventually have to just kill off, and you let those runners, the juveniles, take over in their space. Um,
okay.
so they self-propagate in that way, but it's nice when you are guiding them along as far as where they're going to take root.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, for the majority of control I did is any that were trying to escape. Like, no,
Oh yeah, sure.
that's not your place out here. You stay in there where
Yeah,
I put you.
yeah. I get some
Um,
escapism with the strawberries too. My raspberries are the worst at spreading, though. My neighbors have been very patient, and they just mow them over. They're cool. They love my garden, but yeah, that's the worst for escaping. I get it.
all right. So I'm thinking, figured out where we want it to be, figure out kind of what we want to plant.
Yeah. What do you want to plant?
I mean, I think for us, we'll obviously keep with the strawberries. Our kids love those. I even eat those. We'll probably keep doing cucumbers. Now with a trellis, we've just let them take over the ground, which I think has had some. I mean, we've had success with that, but it's certainly not ideal. And eventually, disease takes over. Um, and then we've done tomatoes, which I think we'll continue to do. And then we've kind of thrown darts at like peppers, onions, lettuce, to mixed success.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Onions are pretty tough for somebody who's, if you consider yourself a novice or like a haphazard gardener, I definitely wouldn't recommend standard onion. There are perennial varieties like an Egyptian walking onion that aren't an actual bulbous variety. They're more of a like a scallion effectively. And they require next to no upkeep, and you just come and go, and you don't plant them annually. But onions can
okay.
be tough. Um, yeah, start with things that, like I said, you want to eat. That's for sure. There are a
Yep.
couple of vegetables that I recommend to anybody who, they say, "Yeah, I'm not a gardener. What should I start with?" At least, especially in our area, things that are hard to kill. There are two things that are really great. Zucchini. They're so prolific. They grow in a multitude of soils, and the predation on them is pretty low. And green beans, pole beans, because they grow quickly, they're fun to watch, and they're prolific. So just hard to kill and fun to watch, and great for kids. So
Yeah. Yeah,
because
no, that's perfect.
they can plant those great big seeds, and they grow quickly too. So that attention span over the summer, they can really see change day to day, especially in peak season.
Yep.
But yeah,
Okay.
get to trellising if that's going to be, if every year I do a couple new things in the garden. And if that's your new thing this year, do a couple different trellises. Stake your tomatoes, but have a real nice vertical situation for your cucumbers and grow something behind it. Maybe put some Brussels sprouts behind it. You probably don't like Brussels sprouts, you spoil. I'm an only child
Actually,
too, but I love veggies. So
if you slather those things in enough salt and garlic and throw
butter,
them on a
yeah.
pan, yeah, and butter, like that, those are actually pretty good. We've done that a couple times, so I like that. So where do you get? So you've kind of so we've kind of thought through. Okay, what are we going to plant? Where do you get seeds?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of places that I like. If you're ordering them online, I highly recommend places like Seed Savers Exchange. Hashtag not sponsored, but Seed Savers is this really neat nonprofit that's dedicated to preserving seeds of a great variety, rare seeds, heirloom seeds is their thing, as they call it. All of their seeds come with a story of where they've come from, how they emigrated to this place. So much of the biodiversity of our vegetables in America, it has been lost over the years just to our agricultural methods of mass production. So I really like searching for places that have unique things. So none of my squashes look like what you can get in a store. This year I'm growing 5 different kinds of tomatoes that you'd never find in a store. They have different flavor profiles, different colors. And that's fun for me because it's so different. I like to see those. I like to taste those. Whenever people come through my garden and look, they're excited by it. It's like, oh, what the hell is that? That's a tomato? And that crosses over into other things. Eventually you can start gardening with all the purple varieties of everything, your purple carrots, your purple cauliflower, etc. So I think the answer to your question, Seed Savers, I love Seed Savers.
Okay.
What else do I have here? I have, there's nothing wrong with going out to Fleet Farm and just picking up whatever their local brand is and getting started. This year, what did I try? What is this company? Oh my God, rareseeds.com. I don't know if this is scamish or not, but this was advertised to me on not Pinterest, Instagram of all places, rareseeds.com. And Baker Creek, that's what it is, Baker Creek seeds. I think it might be a little scammy, but they do have some interesting seeds. I don't know how rare they are or what their practices are. They're not nearly as awesome as Seed Savers, but I'm still trying out some of their stuff. I give a plug to M.I. Gardener. That's a company over in Michigan. Luke is his name. He's got a prolific gardening YouTube channel, and he started a seed company and gardening store a couple years ago. And his seed bank is pretty prolific too. Those seeds are at a low cost because they don't do a catalog, for example. So they can cut out a lot of those prices that get transferred into the seed packets. And they're smaller than a big conglomerate. You don't get as many seeds in a packet, but that's a good place too. So online is where I get most of mine, or from seed swaps. People that just save things. I'll save stuff from year to year and plant them myself or pass them along, because oftentimes you'll have people doing open pollinating. So you'll get these interesting second generation crosses, hybrids, and it's always an adventure. I got this second generation pepper hybrid from my buddy Jim, Midwest gardener, and they're so cute. These like purple and orange and yellow peppers that are about this big, and like I don't even know how to classify them other than they're a spicy, colorful, really neat ornamental pepper. So it's just
Okay.
something that kind of happened in his garden.
All right. So I'm thinking, so that's super helpful from my space in the world of lawn care. When you talk about seed, it's usually
Oh,
how has it
bulk.
been? Yeah, for one, but the differences are genetic over time, having been
Hmm.
bred and studied to be like disease tolerant and heat tolerant and shade tolerant and have this, they plant a bunch of them and whichever one has the best color they propagate. and
Yeah.
and so is there that type of thing in gardening where something is inherently better? I mean, you kind of mentioned, we've lost a lot of the diversity because of a lot of that, but is there that type of factor to consider or not
There
so
are those
much?
kind of seeds that you can certainly find, and I hold depends on your sphere, a relatively unpopular opinion that there's a place in the world for all kinds of seeds, including GMOs. I mean, you think of the modern strain of corn, how that has been genetically modified. Like we um, breed our dogs, we bred our corn, everything is bred.
Right.
It's just what gets the science and what gets the limelight. But think of how productive that's become and how many people we've been able to feed and all the good that comes from that. So you can certainly get the biggest, reddest tomato in a seed that's been engineered, and more power to you.
Okay.
Same with your corn. And I can't spit off a brand, but I mean, well, maybe Burpee. That's your big seed company, big pharma. We got to watch out for them, Burpee. But I mean, they'll have the prettiest colors and the most pure things that you can find if that's what you're looking for. But if you're
Yeah.
looking for more variety and genetic diversity, which will attract pardon me, that's this Guinness, that will attract hands down a greater amount of natural pollinators, which I go for. Go for these organic heirloom seeds.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure because I kind of like the idea of staying smaller as well. And it's kind of something I've tried to do as well with any of the fertilizers I buy, seeds that I buy, any of the stuff I try to first do it from at least a smaller, more specialized company. So
Mhm.
I'd probably go the online route, which brings up another question. We sit here on March 11th.
Mhm.
When do you need to make an online purchase to have those by the time that you need them? Because supply chains are obviously just borked at the moment.
Yeah,
So
this year is tough. So I guess the short answer is a couple weeks ago. And it also depends on what you're going to be planting. So I've got raised beds, so I plant earlier than most people because of how I've amended my soil and because of how I've mulched. I can get good workable soil a couple weeks earlier than most people in our area. So here in Oshkosh, like I guess the adage is people are putting their gardens in around Memorial Day, end of May. I'm planting things in the middle of April, very early May. Some things like tomatoes I'll plant even the first week of May, which is like my grandpa would say, "What the hell are you doing? You're going to kill those tomatoes." But I'm growing in a different kind of situation. I'm starting those in my grow room, which is this closet that you can't see behind me too. But I've got this piece of paper that I'm looking at. I just mapped this out today, what seeds I need to start indoors and when I'm going to transplant them out based off of how many weeks I usually keep them growing underneath the grow light in the grow room. So your situation, check the website. They'll be very open on their website and saying, expect this much of a delay. And if there are things that you're planting in the ground directly, you're still good. Like if you're going to be planting carrots, or if you're just going to do a hillage of cucumbers, or if you're going, what else are you going to grow? If you're doing beans, that kind of corn, yeah, you can get that now. Certainly, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get to you, but you're not going to be planting that in the ground until mid-May. If you're starting seeds indoors like me, yeah, it might pay to go to a store and see what organic selection they have now, because I've got a wave of seed starting on the 15th, the 29th, the 5th and the 26th, you know?
Okay. Is there Are there certain things in our area that's like you have to get this germinated indoors before, or it's just not going to work with our climate? Or is that more just the ideal practice, but you can get away with planting everything out in the ground once it's not frozen anymore?
Well, remember, nature is all outdoors. So yes,
Right.
you can start everything outdoors to mixed success. Um, I'm trying to think. Like I'm growing lavender this year, and I've got some seeds on a wet paper towel in my refrigerator for 30 days that are slowly germinating before I put them in seed start mix so I can transplant them outdoors. I could try to start them outdoors, but they require very specific conditions. So you can, when you're doing it indoors on your own time, you're able to control those conditions. I can't
Yep.
think of anything for us off the top of my head that's just like a no-go. And of course, you can always go to a nursery and get some starts, some seedlings already and put them out if you just don't want to do the seed starting process yourself, don't have the time, and didn't think of it. And it's kind of fun to go through it anyways, right?
Right.
But there are, on the other hand, plenty of things that you don't want to start ahead of time and then transplant into the garden. You never want to start carrots indoors and transplant them outdoors, or beets or radishes, any kind of root vegetable, even corn. I would never start corn indoors and transplant that outdoors.
There a reason for that?
Well, tap roots indefinitely. Well, the first couple that I recommended, the carrots, the beets, the radishes, those are root vegetables that you're eating. So you don't want to disturb that root in its early growth, because it really goes through and tries to find that straight path and go straight down and burgeon afterwards. So they don't take to transplanting very well. So,
Okay, that
and
makes sense.
with corn, big old root, and they're a strong woody kind of fibrous thing anyways. They just don't need to be started indoors.
All right. I don't know if I actually want to grow corn, but I feel like being from Wisconsin and from the Midwest in general, it's like the thing I feel like I should try. One, I love corn, and two, I think it'd just be cool to have. You've struggled with it, correct?
I
Even
tried it for 3 years and I'm not doing it this year. Yes.
was it the squirrels that were just
It's a little bit of a couple things. Yes, squirrels for the first 2 years, the location I was planting it in, they grew, like the stalks themselves grew really tall. Um, but when I got actual ears on them, they were never the size that I wanted or the quality that I wanted. And then squirrels for the first 2 years really just annihilated them. I would go out there and it was like this horrible massacre. Last year, I planted them in the right location. They were well protected, so predation wasn't an issue. And pollination wasn't an issue either. But the ears that I got, and I was only growing popcorn, they were just pathetic. So it ended up not being really worth anything. They were cool in the garden. They definitely make an accent. They like, oh man, people walking by because we're right on a nice busy street by the university look like, oh my god, that guy's growing all this kind of stuff. It's cool, and I use the stalks as decoration. But as far as food was concerned, it just wasn't worth it. So I think the next time I try corn, I'm going to dedicate a whole bed to a Three Sisters method, and it'll be corn, beans, and squash in that bed, but probably not for another year or two.
okay? And is corn something that is very soil and nutrient dependent, where maybe that's an issue, or you don't think so?
I've personally grown it in dense clay and in a really loose amended raised bed, and it's grown well for me in both places. Personally, it also depends on the heat, the level of sun that you have and the moisture content. But maybe that's the thing. Maybe I don't have enough of the right kind of nutrient mix for it. I just don't know. I don't think that's the situation because I've got a pretty religious composting regimen that I do, and everything else is nice and healthy and prolific. But I guess I'm just not a corn guy right now, and that's okay. I can come
Right.
back to it another year and learn from that.
Yep. Now, so maybe transitioning into, do you do any sort of fertilizing, or do you only do composting and amending the soil that way?
I only compost. Yep.
Okay. Have you ever
Uh,
done any sort of like soil testing or anything like that for what you have?
I've done soil testing only for the pH levels. In particular, like when I was transplanting blueberries last year, I wanted to see what, I mean, twice a year I would check the levels and I would add amendment to the soil. What am I adding? Some kind of sulfate, I think, to bring that pH lower because they just require a lower pH to be prolific and healthy.
Yep.
But no, in a small garden, I don't think, I think the society that we're in pushes fertilizers a lot where they're not necessary, especially for food, because I mean, it's a thing. Oh, you've got to plant and you've got to fertilize to get that biggest, greenest leaf, reddest tomato, et cetera, et cetera. Well, and if you've got really poor soil, yeah, fertilizer is going to be good for you if you want to get started before you get going and you've got that nice, healthy biome in there. But the kind of gardening that I've worked for, I mean, I've got a really healthy micro rhizome layer. You know, I don't till my soil, I don't move it. So you've got that microbiota that's just naturally being beneficial. And I add all the compost and the mulch leaves and all this kind of stuff to the top that just naturally breaks down and gives the right amounts of, you know, nitrates and phosphates and extra carbon into the soil. An organic fertilizer, even, I just don't need. But
Okay.
there are people that do it, and there are ways to do it right. I don't garden that way. I don't think I need to.
And it's something kind of interesting um, that maybe crosses over a little bit from lawn care. So I think lawn care kind of gets a bad rap for, you know, the issues with runoff into oceans and lakes, and, you know, you're throwing all these chemicals down. And kind of one thing I've been happy with to see is, at least within, you know, the space that I play in, which is people that are very, very serious about it, that have YouTube channels that, you know, are agronomists and actually have degrees in
Yeah.
how to do this, is the one way I've heard it put that was the kind of most eye-opening, and I'm maybe thinking it crosses over here too, is we tend to analyze everything as if we were farmers, and that's not really how this works, because it's like the grass plant uses this amount of nutrient in a year, so you need to add this amount of nutrient. Well, if you're mulching clippings back down to the soil, that stays. Or if you're doing gardening on a smaller scale, you know, a cornfield needs to have a very specific set of nutrients put into it in the spring, because that corn plant is going to use all of it and then be removed and
Mm-hmm.
taken somewhere else. So I'm wondering too, if maybe from a smaller garden perspective, when like, for one, it's capitalism and it's marketing and it's a way for companies to make money, is to sell you fertilizers you don't need. But two, it's maybe that kind of farming perspective of every spring a farm needs to put this amount of nutrient in so that it grows, and then they take it out of the field and it's gone forever.
You're exactly
Versus,
right. And that brings up a point of crop rotation that people will think of, and that has come from the agricultural sphere. And people think, oh, I have to rotate my crops in my garden too, but it's a matter of scale, and it's just, again, I've got a big garden, but I do not need to rotate my crops. I don't, because I've got a good composting situation, and I'm not growing one kind of thing that's pulling all of one nutrient out of the ground that I then have to supplement, or plant something that's not going to pull that in next year. It's just not necessary if you've got a good composting regimen. Or the average gardener will get bored or will forget what they planted there, you know, last year. And in a couple years, you've got something different anyways. So it's not a situation. But I think your perspective is right, that a lot of the things that we think of are based off of agricultural scales, really
yeah,
big things. It's good to
yeah.
keep
And
in mind, because
I
I
was
do.
curious. Sorry.
I'm very, no, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I am very anti-lawn. So you and I are on different perspectives, but we're still friends. Because one day I'd like to rip up my backyard and have like clover, just a nice bed of clover through this whole sucker, you know. And I'm trying to buy another back lot, and I want that to be all prairie restoration. So
Okay.
different kinds of grass, you know, with different root levels, etc. But I do appreciate your golfing lawn. Tell everybody you've got the putt-putt lawn, and it's beautiful.
I'm at least working on it. So yeah, everything about this lot that we have was terrible.
Yeah,
Like,
you've done so much work.
quite literally everything. So it was basically like an acre of buckthorn, more or less.
Burn it.
And so, yeah, we've gotten that down to maybe a couple hundred square feet of buckthorn through many, many hours. But yeah, in the backyard now, I have all of the hardware. I bought a used mower like you'd see on a golf course. So last summer, I took a section of my yard that was bent grass, which is the type of grass that they use in the north for putting greens. Shaved it down, overseeded, and then this year it should have a fairly legitimate putting green in the backyard that I'll
Huh,
manage and maintain.
that's cool. See, that's a neat thing to me. Like in my world, that's you have this one experiment that you want to really try it, and you're learning the whole way along. And oh yeah, that's something to be proud of. I can't wait to see how it turns out this year. I thought it looked great last year, so it's neat to it's neat to keep that in mind. Like from my world, because I never think of grasses. But you're right, some things take time. Like my asparagus, this is year 3, and this is the first year I'm going to be harvesting from it because you needed to get it established. In the
Okay.
same vein, your putting grass last year might have looked good, but this year is going to be, oh yeah, it's established. That's cool.
Yeah, I think they say like on golf courses, putting green isn't established until like the third or fourth year.
Huh.
Like it works and it's fine, but it doesn't mature and like really survive the beating that it takes. Because it's the grass closest designed to be cut at, what is it, 5/32, I think. Usually it's around an eighth to like 5/32 of an inch that you're going to cut a putting green to be like an actual real thing. Where most of last year I was at like 3/8, so it was kind of not
Mm-hmm.
ideal. Now I have a piece of machinery that'll be able to take it down that low. But
Wow.
yeah, it's still not designed to be cut that short, so you kind of do have to baby it a little bit. Everything needs a little bit more. You need to do fertilizers less and more often. A lot of disease prevention. Bent is fairly susceptible to disease.
Hmm.
Um, Watering needs are a little bit different. Like usually you need some sort of setup to be able to run a irrigation cycle for 5 minutes in the middle of the afternoon in summer, or else it just cooks immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's not designed to be that short. The idea is you have grass that's 3-4 inches tall, and that shields everything from the sun and kind
Mm-hmm.
of saves itself. So it's an interesting experiment, but it's not as hard as everybody says it would be. Like I think the general conception is like I'm gonna have a putting green in my backyard. Like, ha, no, you're not. You need to be a professional with, you know, hundreds of hours a week. And it's like, okay, yeah, to manage 18 greens that are all 3,000 square feet, yeah, that's gonna take a lot of time. I have one green, and it's like 450 square feet, and takes me 2 minutes to cut it. You got to cut it every day. It takes me 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes every
I
day.
want to do it. Yeah.
So
Cool, man.
but yeah, I think the clover lawn is kind of interesting. And although you say you're anti lawn, you have put yourself in a rare group of lawn care enthusiasts as a real mower.
I am a real mower, man. I love my Fiskars mower. And I've got to say, it's gotten even better since I did my review of it. I like it even more. It's like my grass has a personality to it, and I got used to that kind of mower. And after a month, it was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to put up any resistance. It's like the end of the grass went from being really thick to being really thin, so it's softer to walk on, and it's easier to cut with that reel. No problem. I love it.
Way healthier. Real mowing is way healthier for the turf because you're essentially cutting it with the scissors as opposed to ripping its head off,
Yeah,
which is essentially what you're doing with a rotary mower. Like, yes, it's a sharp blade, but really it's just ripping the head of the grass
hacking
off.
it. Yeah, right. And the grass is screaming. Ah!
Yeah, and it does not like that. Like most people don't like having their head ripped off.
Well, I don't know from personal experience, but I believe it. So here's a question for you. Speaking of ripping off a grass's head, is this just an urban myth? Is that great, amazing smell of fresh lawn, the grass crying out in pain chemically? Because I don't smell it when I mow my lawn with a real mower anymore. I only smell it from the rotary mowers.
Maybe? I don't actually know. That's a question I don't have the answer
All
for.
right, Jason. So I'm giving you homework for our next time. Well, where are we? What are
Yes.
we at for time? We're at
Half
40.
hour-ish?
We're doing just fine. I don't know how
Yeah.
much longer we need to go, but for round one, because this has been fun and I want to do it again, even if
Yes.
we get 50 people that watch this. Your homework for next week: A, find out whether it's the grass screaming out in pain chemically, from the rotary mower. And B, I want you to show me what seeds you got. You either need to show me a shopping list digitally
Okay.
or hold up some seeds for me. Okay.
Okay. I
And then
like that.
next time I will show you guys through my grow room because I'll have the first round of seeds in. If you want, we can talk about grow lights and growth medium and healthy watering techniques, those kind of fun things amongst whatever. Because by this time next week, this will be up on YouTube and people will have commented. And if you're still watching after this long, tell us what we should talk about not just next time, but give us some topics of discussion in general. We can have like a themed episode, a couple themed episodes.
Yeah, because I think this one worked out as like a how do you start?
Yeah.
Like where do you start? And then I think we could look at going forward, like, okay, now you've got all this stuff, how do you manage it? You know, what's your watering? What do you need to do on a day-to-day basis? I think that could be kind of the next interesting step.
I want to, yes. And I want to talk about specialty things. Like I want one day all about perennial fruits and vegetables. We texted a little bit about fruit and we didn't cover it tonight. And I love my fruit trees. I've got a little orchard out there and perennial bushes. We got a lot that we can talk about. And I'm going to be learning about lawn care from you too. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any closing remarks? Otherwise, let's call this a day.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Like I said, I think I think there can be some crossover within the predominantly garden content that you have and the predominantly lawn care. You know, it's all people that like doing things outside to make their house a nicer, better place. So
We're all ready
I,
for the spring.
yeah, for sure.
So be sure to subscribe to Jason's channel, my channel, if you're new from either source. Links to important videos and things are down in the description. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you very
Bye.
much. Have a good one. Cheers.